Thank you. Thank you so much for staying. I'm acutely aware that the speaker before lunch is a lot like the corpse at a funeral. Absolutely necessary to the occasion. Nobody wants to hear him say too much. And I'll bear that in mind. As you heard at the beginning of the year, we've established a partnership that we're very excited about with NeuroCare AG, and the CFO of NeuroCare, Kevin, is with us today, and anybody who'd like to have a chance to sit down with us one-on-one, just talk to the meeting organizers, and we'll be happy to do that. But really what I'd like to talk about for the next 20 minutes is the revolution that we're experiencing in neuroplastic therapy for central nervous system disease. Because if I'd spoken even 3 years ago about neuroplasticity, people would have scratched their heads and said, well, that's sort of interesting. In the same way that if I'd spoken 15 years ago about GLP-1s, people would have scratched their heads and said, isn't that interesting? And 5 years from now, neuroplastic therapy is going to be as mainstream as GLP-1. So what's important to recognize is that central nervous system disease is really the healthcare challenge of our time. In the last 50 years, we've seen miraculous advances in treating infectious disease, heart disease, cancer, other major causes of death. And in that same period of 50 years, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, autism, traumatic brain injury, ADHD, other CNS conditions have become humanity's largest healthcare challenges. As you now know, in the United States, 1 in 30 children is diagnosed with autism. And at the same time, we've had half a century of abject therapeutic failure in treating these CNS diseases. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death in Americans under the age of 35. Traditional SSRI antidepressants at best work 37% of the time. And that's in the general population. Military personnel, veterans, first responders, so firefighters, policemen, paramedics, have 5 times the rate of suicide compared to the civilian population. And the only approved treatment for suicidality in this day and age remains electroshock therapy, which is not a new treatment. In fact, the only thing that's changed in the last 50 years of electroshock therapy is now we anesthetize you before we induce a seizure in the brain. So perhaps the person who said this best is Nolan Williams, who invented the SAINT protocol for transcranial magnetic stimulation. He talks about transforming the mental health therapeutic landscape in his lifetime, and he describes suicide as the brain's cognitive control unable to suppress the neural circuitry underlying negative mood that ultimately overwhelms the brain and causes the human being to take his or her own life. And ironically, Nolan put this on his webpage about 60 days before he took his own life. I'll never forget sitting with the daughter of my closest friend the night before his funeral saying, if your father had had a short circuit in his heart and died from it, tomorrow would be a horrible day, but nobody would be blaming him. And you have to understand that he had a short circuit in his brain and had no more control over how he died than if he died of a heart attack. Now, in the last 50 years, we've lost more troops in the United States to suicide than to combat. When I don't play golf, I don't play tennis. My hobby is to fly search and rescue missions for the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary as an aviator. And last year, the Coast Guard lost 14 shipmates to suicide, not a single loss to operations. And the problem is we have 125 medicines that are approved for treating depression. Every one of those medicines has a black box warning on the label saying this medicine may cause suicide. And the reason is because all of those serotonin-based drugs induce a side effect called akathisia, which is this horrible, irresistible need to move, to do something, And all too often that movement is throwing yourself off a roof or in front of a train. And it's a biological complication, akathisia. It's not some psychological thing that might get better if you talk to people different. So the change, the real revolution that we're experiencing is neuroplasticity, inducing the brain to make new connections. So when you think about a silicon-based computer, if you take some sand off the beach, melt it down into a wafer, etch 5 or 10 million transistors onto that wafer, you can turn those transistors on and off through software, through programming. And that's how computers work. That's how digital processes work. But the circuits between those transistors on the wafer will never change unless you smash it with a hammer. The human brain is just the opposite. The human brain is constantly making new connections between brain cells. That's what neuroplasticity means. The neuron itself is sending out dendrites that go to another nerve cell. That's how thoughts are formed. That's how emotions are formed. That's the process of neuroplasticity. And when that stops, really bad stuff happens. That's when depression happens. That's when cognitive decline happens. And all of the treatments that are exciting us today, the NMDA-targeted drugs, transcranial magnetic stimulation, hyperbaric oxygen, they all drive neuroplasticity. People are talking about hallucinogenic drugs. Yes, it's true that psilocybin and that whole class of drugs do cause psychedelic experiences, but it's probably not the psychedelic experience that's causing the medical benefit. All of those drugs cause neuroplasticity. They all cause dendritic sprouting between cells. And you're already seeing a whole new second generation of drugs. Transcend 201 is probably the best example, that cause neuroplasticity without causing a psychedelic experience. There are a whole generation of digital therapeutics coming along that are inducing neuroplasticity in the brain with no pharmacologic component. And we're starting to see EEG-guided approaches that may use far less energy than electroshock, but even than TMS, and still cause neuroplastic changes in the brain. So that's the revolution we're experiencing. Probably the first evidence for this came out of Connor Liston's lab, published in Science, showing that ketamine rewires the brain. In a mouse depression model, add ketamine, all of a sudden the dendrites are sprouting and making new connections to other brain cells. And you've restored that process of neuroplasticity that was lost. That's underlying cases of depression. And transcranial magnetic stimulation, so you're talking about a technology where potent magnetic fields outside the brain, literally the same magnet that you have in an MRI machine, cause electrical changes within the brain that cause sprouting of dendrites. And part of the basis for our partnership with NeuroCare is that they manufacture the Apollo TMS machine. And we're seeing that with new protocols, even a single day of treatment can cause profound improvements in depression and PTSD. And adding our drug D-cycloserine has the potential not only to double the rate of response to TMS treatment, but to increase the rate of actual remission by as much as eightfold. And these are published data that I'll show you. TMS is a technology that's currently delivered by non-physician technologists, and the U.S. government now is investing through the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in roboticizing this, so you may not even need skilled human technicians within a couple of years. So just to give you a sense of what's at stake, the best antidepressant therapy out there has about a 30% rate of remission. According to the SPEC trial, which was hundreds and hundreds of patients. If you have first generation TMS, that's about what you can expect. TMS with expert psychotherapy gets you up to about 56% response. And TMS with cycloserine in the one-day protocol, you're talking 87% response, 72% remission from a single day of treatment. These are results that were unimaginable in psychiatry just a few years ago. You know, the old joke used to be, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer was, well, it only takes one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. So you're talking about results that people only dreamed of achieving with a lifetime of psychotherapy, achieved in a day or a week of a very non-invasive treatment with almost no side effects. Now, the other component coming along that's really important to watch is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And this didn't come from the psychiatry world at all. It actually came from a wound healing doctor in Israel who spent much of his career trying to rescue diabetic feet and other deep wounds with hyperbaric oxygen, and started to form the belief that post-traumatic stress disorder is actually a wound in the brain. Well, the best animal model for PTSD is called the predator response model. So rats have spent 5 million years in evolution understanding that anything to do with cats is really hazardous to their longevity. So the way you induce PTSD in a rat is you put a vial of cat urine in the rat's cage, and within an hour, that rat will have all the clinical hallmarks of PTSD. But not only that, if you section the rat's brain, you're going to see inflammatory cells, you're going to see necrotic cells, you're going to see a physical histologic wound in the brain. And if you put that rat in a hyperbaric chamber, you can heal that wound, and it won't heal if you put the rat in a sham chamber. So that's why the Israeli army actually pioneered this. They're putting 200 and 300 soldiers with battlefield PTSD a day into hyperbaric chambers, and the U.S. Army is very quickly following suit because hyperbaric oxygen is the only therapy so far that's ever shown a real benefit in post-traumatic stress disorder, a 40% reduction on the CAPS-5 scale. So we've put all of that together clinically, and that's how we sort of went from being another binary biotech company to a company that said, forget this. We're going to start treating patients, and we're going to start finding out what works in our patients while we're also developing drugs and taking this through the regulatory process. So we have a program going in Denver that's being funded by the Denver Fire Department because firefighters, as do most first responders, have 5 times the risk of PTSD as civilians. You're talking about a highly trained individual who's taken 5 years to master his or her craft, $200,000 on average of training, and a firefighter who's on antidepressants for PTSD is off the truck. A police officer on antidepressants is out of the field, has to turn in his or her gun. A paramedic with PTSD can't really function on the ambulance. So these are critical personnel who are very hard to replace. And we've put together a program where we induce the immediate change with ketamine because ketamine works within hours. Problem is the effect of a ketamine injection lasts 5 days to a week. You can't keep doing it over and over again because ketamine's an addictive drug. It's a hallucinogenic drug, but short-term ketamine is magic. Add to that transcranial magnetic stimulation, hyperbaric oxygen with effective psychotherapy to support it, and we're seeing a 90% rate of remission. 90% of the first 100 patients treated got back on the truck, not because we said they were fit for duty, but because the independent board that had to evaluate them said that they were fit for duty. And this is a program that we're now taking national, not only with firefighters, but also with the military. We have reimbursement in the United States. TRICARE is the insurance organization that pays for military care that happens off base, whereas the military medicine system pays for care on base. So this is really becoming the basis of the partnership that we announced with NeuroCare, where we're developing drugs, we're developing a preservative-free form of ketamine, we're developing a D-cycloserine drug that are in various stages of FDA approval. Meanwhile, NeuroCare continues to develop the Apollo TMS device, continues to develop EEG-based technology that hopefully one day will replace TMS with lower energy approaches to healing the brain. And together, we're building a network of clinics that will serve as a flagship model in the U.S. and serve as a medical service organization that can also provide the front end to other clinics. An integrated platform that starts out with a training academy, because this is a whole new area of science that people don't learn about in their psychiatric training. Most people getting out of psychiatry training haven't ever worked with interventional psychiatry, and yet it's the future. Adding to that, a very exciting technology coming out of France, Emobot, where we can put an app on somebody's phone, and just by measuring voice inflection and facial configuration, that app is better at measuring depression than a depression scale that's administered by a trained psychologist. Adding to that, a treatment platform built around transcranial magnetic stimulation, and hopefully within the next year or two, you'll see that increasingly replaced by the lower energy, what we call QEEG devices, hyperbaric oxygen, and of course the drugs that we're developing. So we're working on building and rolling out that integrated platform because we're seeing that it works, and payers who are faced with the need to keep critical personnel in the field are openly willing to pay for it. Whether an insurance carrier who doesn't own the problem is willing to pay as much, we don't know yet. But we certainly know that the employer of a first responder, that the military organizations, that the people who have to live with the consequences of this disability are actively willing to pay for it. So neuroplastic care is really poised for explosive growth. You're talking about an addressable market of more than 45 million patients in the U.S. alone, where treatment for depression and PTSD is being proven every day, where autism, pain, Parkinson's, and other CNS conditions are in the pipeline, and where the installed base is rapidly growing. And at the same time, we have drugs that are in the FDA now. We're expecting approval for our preservative-free ketamine over the summer. We're actively talking to the FDA about adding our depression claims to generic ketamine, making it an innovative drug. We're expecting to be in the field very quickly with an approved IND to be using D-cycloserine to double the effect of transcranial magnetic stimulation. And at the same time, you're seeing rapid growth in uptake of TMS machines, to the point where the biggest problem in buying a TMS machine is not placing the order, but getting it delivered. You're seeing a network of clinics growing across the United States. There are probably 2,000 TMS machines installed today. 5 years from now, you're going to see 20,000 machines installed, because compared to a lifetime of psychotherapy that doesn't work very well, all of a sudden we have this ability to treat patients who have these diseases and have a high expectation that people will be better. So some people are buying our stock because analysts have said that a share of NRx is probably worth $25 to $45, which sounds crazy compared to the $2 retail price you're seeing today. But there are 4 analysts out there saying it. And we're talking to people about investing directly with us in standing up clinics. You can read the analyst reports for yourself. These are analysts who've put a lifetime of reputation behind being right about which companies are going to win. And you may say, these are crazy predictions. Well, I thought NVIDIA at $1 was a crazy prediction too. Look where I am compared to the people who invested in NVIDIA at $1. And if you're wondering, well, where's the precedent for all of this? Why is this guy standing up here talking about something that doesn't exist? Take a look at what happened when Fresenius and DaVita said, this dialysis business is crazy. It's as likely to kill you as help you. Nobody understands how to make the machines work properly. No one understands how to keep the patients safe. The people at Fresenius realized that the plasticizers and the IV bags were killing patients, so they invented IV bags with no plasticizers in them. And one reason I'm giving you that as an example is because my partner in all of this, Thomas Mechtersheimer, spent 20 years of his life helping to build Fresenius. So this model for integrated care around these otherwise untreatable chronic diseases has already been shown to work in the renal dialysis world. So today we're showing the first results in depression, in PTSD. The results are published. We're happy to talk with you about them, but you can read about them. And my prediction is that within a few years, we're going to take for granted that not only can we treat PTSD, we can treat traumatic brain injury, we can treat autism, we can treat cognitive impairment. We're going to see results appear in Parkinson's disease. We're only beginning to understand the neuroplastic revolution that's going to make this the decade of the brain. So thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk with you about this, and I look forward to the chance to speak with you one-on-one.